Welcome to AINdebrief, where we take a look back at the most important aviation stories of the past week by the AIN editors who covered them. I'm AIN Alerts editor Chad Troutvetter. In this week's episode, Charles Alcock, editor of AIN's FutureFlight resource, discusses the spate of eVTOL-related news this week from three established business aviation OEMs. AIN editor-in-chief Matt Thurber talks about how the big three avionics manufacturers are trying to keep the pilot in the loop as aircraft become more automated. He also gives an update on the Dassault Falcon 6 project. Senior editor Kerry Lynch explains NATA's push for FBO employees to get anti-human traffic training. And senior editor Jerry Siebenmark gives an overview of how racecar driver and 2017 NASCAR Cup Series champion Martin Truex Jr.'s air charter operation pivoted during the pandemic. So let's start this week's episode with Charlie. I understand you have some news about some of the bigger business aviation OEMs in the eVTOL space. So what's going on?
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. Established aviation companies are now making it far clearer that they want to have a part in what people call urban air mobility or advanced air mobility. And so some examples of this. Just today, Embraer, the business aircraft manufacturer, confirmed what we've long suspected, and that is that it has a serious plan not only to develop an eVTOL aircraft, but also to get involved in providing a lot of supporting infrastructure like air traffic management services and so on. And today it announced that it's created a whole new subsidiary company that will focus on just this. And the company's name is EVE Urban Air Mobility Solutions. And this has come out of Embraer X's technology, advanced technology incubator unit, I suppose you'd say. It's significant because earlier this year, after the deal between Embraer and Boeing broke down to merge the commercial aircraft divisions, one of the casualties we thought might be from that, given the financial pressures, was exactly this. We thought that maybe Embraer just wouldn't feel it had the funds to advance its plans in this sector. But now here it is, effectively confirming what we've long suspected. Not only is it going to build an eVTOL aircraft, which is also called EVE, but it's going to do far more than that. And then 12 hours ago, GE, General Electric, GE Aviation, announced that it's working with Uber Elevate to provide flight data monitoring services and software to support the eVTOL aircraft that are going to be used for Uber's air taxi network. And that, this is probably the most visible involvement by GE in this sector. And then finally, this is a really fascinating tidbit that I just managed to get confirmed today. Somebody got hold of some video of apparently an eVTOL aircraft that nobody had seen before being ground tested at Cranfield Airport in the UK. And it's been confirmed today by Rolls-Royce that indeed they're involved in this. So this is Rolls-Royce, which has been working on electric and hybrid electric propulsion, now admitting, yes, we've done more than just develop the technology. We're actually testing it on a fairly advanced-looking test bed. And what we need to find out next is who's actually building that aircraft, because I'm pretty sure it's not Rolls-Royce. But, every day brings some new tidbit like this.
Yeah, and electric aviation isn't just for eVTOL, right?
That's right. I've told you before that one of the trends this year is that more and more fixed-wing aircraft are now either being repurposed, existing aircraft repurposed for electric aviation and for autonomous operations, but also in some cases brand new aircraft, fixed-wing aircraft being developed. So some examples from this week in France, the company Volt Aero just started flight testing its new Casio aircraft, or rather a technology demonstrator of its Casio aircraft, using its own hybrid electric propulsion system. For the moment, they're testing it in tandem with some existing Safran electric motors, but the intention is it will entirely be powered by their system when it goes into service. And then in the UK again, Britten Norman, which is a company that's built a whole series of utility aircraft, the most recent of which is the Islander, is now saying that it's partnering with other companies to develop an autonomous version of the Islander to be used for all manner of utility applications. What's so interesting to me is this basic design is 55 years old, and yet here they are planning for a long-term future around autonomous operations. So autonomy and electric aviation is just gathering more and more momentum each week, I'd say.
Yeah, should we expect electric aviation to be more of a hybrid model at first, just because the battery technology isn't there yet?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there is no doubt that the quickest way to get this technology into service is through a hybrid model. It will be easier to certify. It's not hostage to the limitations of battery technology at the moment. So yes, I'm pretty sure that hybrid aircraft will take off first. That's not a complete leap to a carbon-free future, but it's a very, very good first step. And I think it will build confidence and credibility as the all-electric propulsion becomes more viable.
Yeah, and along the carbon-free, some of the hybrid or hydrogen as well,
yes,
right?
Absolutely. Yes, we've spoken in recent weeks about how hydrogen is gathering momentum. It certainly is. I still think hybrid electric will get there first. There's a lot of potential in hydrogen, but there's quite a lot to prove in terms of not only how the propulsion will work and how it will be integrated with conventional airframes, but also the infrastructure to support that needs some work too.
Yeah, but it's an exciting field all around. Electric aviation is said to be the third revolution, right?
Absolutely. It definitely is. And between that and then combining it with autonomous flight technology, what's so encouraging, I think, is that even in this absolutely dire year for aviation, with this dark shadow of COVID over it, it is actually pretty remarkable that people are still investing significant amounts of money and resources into advancing this technology, because they know if the industry is to have a long-term sustainable future, they've got to stick at this. They can't just shrug their shoulders and give up.
Yeah, it's definitely something to watch. It'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out.
Most certainly. Good to chat about it.
All right. Thanks, Charlie. So, Matt, let's go over to you. On Thursday, Dassault announced that they have a rollout date for the Falcon 6X. So what's the date and what's this mean for the program?
Right, Chad. So the 6X is going to roll out on December 8th at the production facility in Bordeaux, Marignac, France. And this signals that the 6X program is definitely on track, and it's still scheduled for its first flight in early 2021. And that means it'll also be on schedule for certification and entry into service in 2022.
Yeah, this is kind of a testament to Dassault. France was shut down for quite a bit over the COVID crisis, but it seems like they've kept the people on this team, at least working on the project for the time being to keep it on track, right?
That's true, Chad. And in fact, France is having a resurgence of COVID cases right now, but Dassault Aviation early on took a lot of steps to ensure the safety and health of all the people who work on these programs, and they've been able to keep it on track. Everything's on schedule, including the program for the Pratt & Whitney PW812D engines that are powering the Falcon 6X.
Yeah, but they did delay the what they call the NX, or their Next Falcon, because of the COVID crisis too, right? Though
there hasn't been much news from Dassault about the Next Falcon, but we know they've been working on it for a while. It's just something they will not talk about, but we expect to hear something about it. I don't know, maybe next year, hopefully.
Yeah, well, it's good that they're continuing the 6X. So, that's the, there's at least moving forward on that.
Absolutely.
So another story that you wrote this week you actually wrote it for our NBA special edition coverage. Was about automation, and I actually found it pretty interesting. And you just kind of outlined the problems with automation, as aircraft continue to get more automated. So, can you just summarize what some of the issues were with automation?
Thanks, Chad. Yes, the automation issues remain fascinating for pilots and pretty much anybody involved with aviation. And it's kind of a conundrum because the more automation that is employed in airplanes, the more pilots have to be trained to understand exactly what the automation is doing, and also to understand when it's not working, how to sort of dial down the automation and just fly the airplane with basically normal flight operations instead of relying on the automation. So,
yeah, you pointed out something in I believe it was the Boeing 787 that when the aircraft was more than 40 degrees for intercept on the ILS, that it wouldn't capture the localizer.
Right, that's true.
Correctly, right?
And this was highlighted in an FAA Special Airworthiness Information Bulletin. And it's not unusual for autopilots to reject capturing a localizer beyond a certain threshold, like 45 degrees or something like that. The problem here with the 787 was that not only did it not capture the localizer, but the flight mode annunciator, basically the pilot's scoreboard, indicated that it was capturing the localizer. So the pilot might look at it and go, okay, it's capturing the localizer, but then the airplane just flies beyond the localizer and still starts descending on the glide slope. So this was a fairly important safety issue.
Yeah, that's really dangerous. So
exactly, and it just means that pilots really have to stay in the loop no matter the level of automation that's involved. And when I interviewed experts at Garmin, Rockwell Collins, and Honeywell, that was a universal conclusion, is that everything they do has to ensure that the pilot is in the loop in any kind of automation situation.
yeah, do they have different philosophies though? Otherwise,
I don't know if they have different philosophies. They have sort of different things that they're working on. But an example of a different philosophy is that Garmin, from day one, designed its autopilots so that if a certain parameter was exceeded, some autopilots, if the airplane, for example, climbs in a vertical speed climb, and the airspeed gets too slow, at a certain point, the autopilot just shuts off and gives the airplane back to the pilot and says, okay, what are you going to do now? But Garmin didn't want that to happen, so it designed its system so it doesn't just go right to the stall and then turn the airplane over to the pilot. But, part of this is an advantage that Garmin had because it was a startup company and not building on entrenched technology. It was starting out with everything new, basically from scratch.
right? And did Rockwell and Honeywell, the established companies, they have anything interesting to say as far as this technology goes?
Absolutely. Collins Aerospace is working on a lot of new design features, especially in flight controls. They do have a lot of expertise in fly-by-wire, and they are working closely with the upcoming advanced air mobility or advanced aerial vehicle industry to develop flight controls for those systems. And those are going to be likely fully automated systems. Honeywell is furthering its work to improve the ride for passengers and lower pilot workload, which is pretty much a goal of automation for any avionics manufacturer. And they have done a lot with the Epic-based avionics systems that are in modern Gulfstreams and Falcon jets. And one of the interesting areas that Honeywell is working on is adapting its IntuView RDR 84K electronically steered radar to be able to see the runway environment to guide an airplane to landing instead of using sensors like GPS or localizers or whatever. This could offer a lot more accuracy and allow operations basically in 0-0 weather conditions.
It's really interesting.
But Honeywell is also working on fly-by-wire flight controls and pilotless aircraft, and how that could also benefit manned aircraft. One thing that all three manufacturers agreed on is that, at least in business aviation, while development of automation is going to continue, unmanned aircraft operations are fairly unlikely for a while, because people who own business aircraft for their own security and safety and efficient travel are likely going to want two pilots up front for quite a long time.
The one sure thing is that automation is going to continue to increase in all aircraft. So I think this is something that pilots need to be aware of and, just get more information on.
Absolutely. And one of the interesting questions I asked all three was, well, since automation is getting better and better, why is pilot training still taking so long? Initial pilot training courses for these new modern business jets are just as long, if not longer, than they've ever been. Some of them 3.5 weeks, almost 4 weeks of training. And while they agreed that the automation is helping pilots in many ways, they still feel that it's important for the pilot to understand how the aircraft systems and especially the avionics automation work, and how to fully recognize when something isn't working and train for that.
That's a good point. So if you want to read Matt's story, if you haven't read it yet, you can go to AIN Online. If you click on the NBA up in a red tab at the top, that'll take you to the NBA stories, and Matt's story will be within that, probably near the top if you're listening this week. All right, thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Chad.
All right, so Kerry, you did a story on human trafficking awareness and training this week. And part of the problem is that while the Part 135 and Part 121 personnel, were at least the ones who have passenger interaction, were required to take the training, the FBO employees haven't. And that's kind of an area that NATA is focusing on, right? And what's the training like as well?
Yeah, so back in 2016, Congress required actually originally just flight attendants to undergo a training program to be aware of potential traffickers trying to use commercial air transportation as a means for trafficking humans. And then a couple years later, they cast a wider net to ticket agents, people on the ground, anyone who has interface with customers have to undergo this type training. And because Congress specified air carriers, that goes to both 121 and 135, or really anybody with commercial air transportation service that might have customer interface. And but you're right, there is no specific legislation regarding FBOs, and NATA, which has been at the forefront of this, is concerned about that because FBOs can be a gateway as well. So, but a bigger issue too is a lot of people, particularly in the 135 community, but also the FBOs, are unaware of that this is even an issue, or that, well, they're aware of human trafficking, but they're unaware that training is mandated in the air carrier segment. So it's been a huge education process to get the air carriers on board, and now they're turning to the FBOs. And the training is actually a very short, common sense awareness program. So the Departments of Homeland Security and Transportation are collaborating on what they call a Blue Lightning initiative. And this initiative is to get the training awareness out to all the carriers and anybody who might have interface with passengers that might be using transportation as a means to traffic humans. And they developed, not only just a training module, but they've developed other kinds of marketing materials and posters and things to put people on the to make people alert. And actually, in the 121 world, there's been great success with spreading the news. There are like 100,000 people who've undergone the training. But in the 135 world, it wasn't as known and common. Some of the more sophisticated, larger operators knew, obviously, but the smaller ones didn't know at all. And so in June, the NATA formed a partnership with the Departments of Homeland Security and with the Department of Transportation to participate in this Blue Lightning initiative. And they put this training module in their NATA compliance services organization. And compliance services provides all sorts of training, not just Blue Lightning training, but also, with ground handling, and they handle known crew members. They have lots of programs to help the business aviation services end of the business. And going back to your original question, Chad, I'm sorry, got off the beaten track there a little bit. The training module is about 17 minutes long. It explains what human trafficking is, how it typically occurs, signs that it is occurring, and what to do should trafficking be suspected. And some of it is just common sense, but it clears up some confusion of the difference between human smuggling, which is just illegally entering borders, and human trafficking, which is basically modern day slavery. And it talks about ways how it's done through force and coercion. It gives some little tips on what to look for. One of the examples it says is, if you are a trafficker, you're tending to exert control over your victim. So you control them by, say, taking all their documents, their identification documents, so they can't go anywhere should they go into a new country or place because they have no documentation. They'll, not give them details on the itinerary. So you might come across a victim and who may give a nonsensical itinerary, like saying we're flying into Dulles and we're going to rent a car and drive to LA. Well, that's not really a sensical itinerary. So they keep them in the dark where they're going, what they're doing, and they keep them close by. For instance, if they have to go to the restroom, they'll accompany them and wait outside and they'll physically hold them close. And there's a little example that you can go through the training to show some of the things that they might do, like take your money away. And they gave you a little test, and, not to ruin the test for people, but one of the things they showed is the victim emptied their pockets, including all the money in the tray. And at the other end of security, when they went to grab the money, the person who was the trafficker grabbed their hand and took the money away. They won't even let them have money. So it's common sense, but some of it's actually kind of thought provoking. It also tells you what to do should you see it. And one thing they say you should not do is intervene. And one thing you should do is report it to public authorities, and there are numbers that they give out for that. Even if you're not sure, it's okay to be wrong, but it's worse to be right and not report it.
And is that available for anybody in the business aviation community through NATA?
Well,
the training?
Well, they offer it through their compliance services. It is a free program. So I would contact NATA and say, I need this training. And by the way, they just started offering this training in June, and already more than 500 air carriers have signed up for it and gone through it, and they've reached almost 5,000 crew members so far. So they're having a good start. But of course, it's not everybody. And so, yes, if you need to have this training, you want to give it to your organizations. And when I was talking to Tim Ovitz, one of the things he said is that organizations are grateful to be able to help with this initiative, to be a part of combating it. And it, it really brings your organization together. So I'm sure NATA compliance services would either set you up or point you to where you can go get it.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Kerry. So, Jerry, you did a story this week about a charter operator. Actually, it's a NASCAR. It's owned by a NASCAR driver, and they kind of pivoted during COVID to do some other stuff other than carry passengers. So, what's the name of the operator and the NASCAR driver, and what are they doing?
The name of the outfit is the charter operator is MTJ Aviation out of North Carolina, and the owner is Martin Truex Jr., who's a very active NASCAR driver and was the 2017 NASCAR Cup champion. And he actually kind of started out in the business, so to speak, by first acquiring his own Hawker 400 XP, and then that kind of evolved to a charter business where they sort of look at having three sort of legs of business. One is NASCAR drivers themselves, getting them to and from races. The other is it's leisure and corporate travelers, which kind of led to this third leg. And the third leg is transporting human organs and the teams, the medical teams that harvest those organs.
So what happened? They started the charter operation last year, and obviously the COVID crisis hit.
One of the pilots for MTJ had previously worked for another charter operator who had a contract with this Transplant Coordinators of America to fly organs, and through him they kind of connected. MTJ connected with transplant coordinators, and they found themselves, transporting organs, and now it accounts for about 50% of their business.
But I guess the really surprising thing is that this story has gotten a lot of social media play this week. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that? What people were saying online?
Yeah, It's funny. It really is. It just shows you the sort of the power of NASCAR. I didn't even stop to count how many individual people are tweeting about it or sharing it, but it's certainly the most in my 20 plus year journalism career. And it's I would say that the majority of those folks are sort of congratulating Martin Truex on doing something righteous, correct, and doing something good for humanity. And then I would say the other part of the Twitter conversation is, hey, you guys, he is getting paid for this. His company is making money for transporting human organs in these medical teams. So let's not, let's kind of bear that in mind. So I would tell you that's the sort of the preponderance of conversation on Twitter, which has been going on for at least a couple of days now.
Yeah, but I guess I suppose there's a little bit of truth to maybe the philanthropy part, because he's not charging as much as the other operators. He's kind of charging more of a charter rate than a organ donor rate, I guess, which is a higher rate. So, but business, it's still business.
Yeah, it's still business. You're right. I will tell you that the president of Martin Truex's holding company, which the charter company falls under, characterized the rates that they're charging the transplant coordinators of America as ultra competitive. And I did verify with the CEO of Transplant Coordinators of America that they indeed are charging these ultra competitive rates. And so, and they're doing 3 to 5 missions a week now, ever since they've signed on. So apparently it's not just the rates, but it's also with the TCOA folks. They're also they know that they've got they're well insured, and they really take good care of their airplanes, and that counts a lot for why they're getting so much business.
Well, it's a smart pivot on their part, though.
Absolutely. Because that obviously that type of traffic has not slowed down in the COVID era.
Definitely. So, all right. Thanks, Jerry. Thanks for listening to AINdebrief. Another podcast episode will air next Friday. In the meantime, go to www.ainonline.com for the latest aviation news from AIN.